Folks, it is the pinnacle of talking season. It is media days. And of course, USC's got to travel a whole heck of a lot further to talk to the media and a whole different set of media and colleagues to deal with on the USC side. Of course, it's new life. It's a new horizon, a new era of USC football in the Big Ten. And really, this is the first time, not that it's football on the field, but that we get some interaction between the schools in a setting, in a public setting. We appreciate you being here, folks. Trojan, Conquest Live. We've done this 110 times with these two. They keep me going and keep us all going here at the Voice of College Football. Matt Zemek, Trojans Wire. Tim Prangley, Trojans Wire as well. That makes it doubly important to get on over to Trojans Wire. And it's a bit of a slow time right now, but have it bookmarked here in the next couple of weeks as we vault from Big Ten Media Days right into fall camp. Matt, Tim, how you guys doing tonight?
Ready to do some actual work. Ready to actually cover Big Ten Media Days. And, Mark, one wonders if we're going to get Big Ten Network calling, John McKay a Big Ten legend. We'll see if any of that stuff happens, but at any rate, it's gonna be new. It's gonna be special, and I think a lot of USC fans are gonna be excited. There's gonna be a media day event, and everyone's gonna be able to watch. We're gonna have Big Ten Network, and we're gonna be able to fire up the TV. So that's gonna be fun, and there's gonna be actual stuff. It's not just gonna be pure conjecture. It's gonna be actual journalists asking actual questions to Big Ten coaches and players. So we get information, and even if it's not USC, there are 17 other schools, we're just going to be scooping up the quotes, processing them, seeing who's making a lot of sense, who's not, and so we actually have something to cover. It's no longer just spitting into the air or doing evergreen historical articles. As much as I like them, they do get a little tiring after a certain point, because you're just rehashing to a certain degree. So good to finally have some actual fresh live content to work with at Big Ten Media Days.
Folks, Tim is not intentionally clowning us tonight. I don't think he is. Maybe he's taking the last kind of down show before we really crank up the season and take it seriously to kind of, because if I could put Tim on mute, I wouldn't do it often, but I would not have selected right now. It would have been during one of our more impassioned arguments at some point during the off season, maybe, but not necessarily tonight. But Tim,
we could talk SEC or recruiting right now if you want, and then you
there
can put
he
me
is
on
right
mute.
there.
That's usually where we battle, is SEC and recruiting rankings. But yeah,
yes, we've done that a time or two, and we're still good friends. Look at that. All right. Tim and Matt here taking your comments and questions. I'll chime in as well. We appreciate your contributions as well. You guys have just been phenomenal to us here at the Voice of College Football. Tim and Matt, of course, kick it into gear on Friday nights and take your calls. So don't forget about that. Friday nights at 7 Pacific, taking your calls. All right. Again, it's Big Ten Media Days, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday this week in Indianapolis. By the way, I'm going to be live in the afternoon each and every day, and we've got a connection on the floor, Voice of College Football credentialed, our guy JR on the Ohio State channel. He is going to be bringing us back video interviews and included right here on the USC channel. So be looking out for those fresh off the presses. All right, here is my favorite question, at least this week. And it goes like this. Okay, we're going to take the mundane first. And of course, Matt's been in this setting a zillion times. Tim is getting accustomed to it, of course. Did a great job covering USC football on the field there at spring practice and on through the summer. But Matt, we'll start with you. If you were going to Big Ten Media Days, and just to paint a little bit of a picture, folks, for you, I went to Big Ten Media Days last year. It had been roughly 20 years since I was at a Media Days live to cover there on site. And I was fortunate, if you look at the percentages of 100, 150 people sitting around the big podium, to be able to make it on the Big Ten Network with my questions to James Franklin, Ryan Day, and I believe Mike Loxley. and then was able to get the side session questions in for a few head coaches as well. So if you get one question in, you're pretty fortunate if you're talking to some of the bigger coaches, and I'm sure Lincoln Riley will be surrounded. So Matt, if you get one or two shots at Lincoln Riley or whomever you would like to track down at Big Ten Media Days, what would you ask them?
Yeah, well, I think my foremost question would be to ask James Franklin about his game management philosophy, because he has stepped on a rake so many times in fourth quarters, and I would try to get at, in terms of, and it's not just like a third down or fourth down situation, but it also connects to his struggles with offensive coordinators. Like, I would ask James Franklin a question along the lines of, do you aim to have a team that plays complementary football to the fullest possible degree, or do you want to simply have the best possible offense and the best possible defense? Because it seems as though James Franklin aims really for a blended philosophy, and it really muddles his overall approach and thought process. So that would be the question. I would try to get at James Franklin's overall modus operandi at Penn State.
As mentioned, I got a chance to ask him a question last year, and what I really wanted to get to the heart of, and I forget how I asked it, but I wanted to really measure and see if I could get out of him how much they are bothered by, think about that Ohio State, Michigan barrier, how much they prepare, how much they think about it in the offseason, how much it moves them. And he was very honest about saying, yeah, that affects some of our decision making in the off season, some of our recruiting. That kind of kicks us in the butt a little bit and motivates us.
There was it wasn't the AD at Penn State, but there was they were talking to somebody about the new arrivals, and you could see it because Penn State. I mean, this is off topic a little bit. Penn State probably loses the most with the additions to the Big Ten. Because Michigan's good, Michigan and Ohio State have always been at that lofty stature, but Penn State was kind of the newcomer, but they were playing the best ball, easily slotted number 3. Well, now you have Ohio State, Washington, and USC. Did anyone else? I think it was just those 3 entered. I'm not sure. Is that the only 3 that joined? I think. But you have those 3 competing now every year, and Penn State is, you can see in his face that you know what, not every Big Ten team was happy that Oregon, Washington, USC entered the Big Ten.
You may have forgotten a team that I believe had the same record as USC last year.
Arizona? Who was it?
All right, Tim. So you get your question. What are you asking, Bruin hater?
I would I'm really, so off the record, like is it in front of a stage?
So
or
this
am
is
I
in
off
front
the
of the
side?
stage. This is if you were actually working the event this week.
Oh, I'll cheat. I'll say I would have asked James Franklin why he was throwing the ball in the fourth quarter of the 2017 Rose Bowl when he had Saquon Barkley, not after 1 interception, but 2 interceptions. For a serious question, wow, I don't know. You did kind of put us on the spot here. Serious question, I would probably ask, and I don't think I'd get a serious, I know I wouldn't get a serious answer. This would be the one I want to ask on the stage where I get like a coach answer and then afterwards. But I would want to know why USC didn't aggressively go after a nose tackle more in the off season. Is it because I want to know? Like, so I would hope, and these little dreams, which I know would never happen. But he's like, oh, hey, come here, Tim. I'll tell you. Off to the side, and he's going to explain how Bear Alexander is going to get a double team, and that's going to free up like an Anthony Lucas playing defensive tackle. You put Bear at the nose tackle, he gets doubled. And then they've schemed it up to where that's going to be advantageous. I mean, I don't know. I don't know why they did it, but I would want to know how come, because they would. That's what gives me a little bit of pause, but also gives me a little bit of excitement. What do they have cooked up? Because they didn't really go full aggressively after that prototypical nose tackle after they lost Rakes. And so I'd like to know why.
Okay, folks in the chat, play along here because this is good stuff. Because I've always said if I could be in 2 locations in major college or professional sports that are not related to the field directly, of course, I would be in NFL draft rooms. Would love to be in NFL draft rooms while it's all going on to hear what is said. And I would love to be in coaching interviews for huge major jobs, USC, Oklahoma, LSU, those kind of jobs. I would love to hear the questions and the conversation and the calisthenics that they put these coaches through to try to prove what they're going to do. Matt, so we'll size it up this way. Now it's no holds barred. You know that you're going to get the truth. You get the truth serum. You're able to inject that. You get a long conversation. This is like all day hanging out. And who do you want to pin down? And if it's somebody other than Lincoln Riley, we certainly want to hear your Lincoln Riley response as well about what you would talk about.
Okay, well, first off, if there's a non-Lincoln Riley truth serum conversation, it would be, Ryan Day, do people want to play for you at Ohio State, or is it just the bag? So that would be the non-Lincoln Riley Big Ten truth serum question. And then
it wasn't like this team was recruiting in the 50s before the NIL.
The Lincoln Riley question would be very simple. Why in the Sam Hill did you double down on Alex Grinch? I mean, that's the ultimate Lincoln Riley question.
Well, let's kick that around between us three. We can do that. So does anyone, so let's start off with the ridiculous one. Does anyone here think that Lincoln Riley brought him over because they were friends? Because that's my favorite one people like to throw out there. Like, hey, you're my friend. Do you want to come with me to LA where I'm getting $110,000 job to win national championships?
Relationships do impact business decisions.
Okay.
I'll say that. I don't think it went to the extreme that you just laid it out.
I mean, Tim, like, I wouldn't characterize it as Lincoln Riley brought Alex Grinch to Los Angeles because, like, I just had to be with my buddy. All right, of course not. But I do think there was, like, Lincoln Riley wanted continuity. Lincoln Riley wanted familiarity. And, you know, that's tied into a relationship as opposed to cutting the cord and going click, clack. I want Jim Leonard. Click, clack. I want, you know, a skull crusher. So, like, you know, it wasn't because I have to be with my bestie, but it was also because it was a familiar thing and it was convenient, and Lincoln took the lazy route. So there are layers to the onion.
Yeah, I mean, everything I've heard about Lincoln Riley is that he's the most competitive person you're ever going to meet. Like, he is absolutely super ultra competitive. And so whenever I don't know something, if my kids did something right or whatever, I always try to think of the why, the motivation. What would be the motivation that usually leads you towards what your answer is going to be? So a guy like Jim Leonard was holding out, right, for the Wisconsin job. At that point, he maybe thought he was could possibly be in play for the Wisconsin job. I wonder who was available. I wonder if there was a cursory, you know, that week, that weekend, because all had happened bang bang, contrary to beliefs that you know a lot of the Oklahoma fans believe. I do believe it kind of happened that quickly, and so I think they did a cursory look around and think, okay, who are our viable options? And I don't think there were any really good viable options. I don't know that Grinch had done anything on the field, though, that would give them optimism that he was going to bring something very successful to USC. And at that point, look, let's face it, if you're going to give Lincoln Riley that kind of money, you know, they also basically said, okay, who do you want in your staff? And so they were going to open, if you're going to give someone $110 million, you're going to give them, you know, a couple $1 million for a DC. So yeah, that's the part that's kind of shocking to me. It's like, I really do want to know that answer is the why. Here's
an important follow-up point. In the process that landed Danton Lynn, let's remember, Lincoln Riley really took his time with that. You know, he did. A lot of people thought, a lot of people said, we talked about it here on this show at the Voice of College Football, get that hire in place before that December 4 transfer portal window starts. You know, line everything up. Remember, he fired Grinch on November 5th, 2 weeks before the final game against UCLA. And let's remember, too, the game against UCLA, the regular season finale was November 18, most teams' season finales was a week later on Thanksgiving week. So Riley actually had a little bit of a leg up in terms of a timetable, which lent more credence, more weight to the idea that, oh, get your defensive coordinator before December 4th so you can make some December transfer portal splashes. But no, he resisted that temptation or that pull, and he took a little extra time, and he wanted to get the right guy. He waited a little bit longer, and that underscores the point that when he was hired in November of 2021, would it have been so bad? Would it have been so harmful for Lincoln Riley? And I know that coaches have to recruit after they get hired. Like we get that. But, if you wait 3 or 4 extra weeks to hire a defensive coordinator in late 2021, and it's the right guy, that is worth losing out on some portal prospects in December of 2021, because it puts you on a better long-term footing. And if you have to have protracted negotiations with an elite candidate for defensive coordinator, that delay of a few extra weeks certainly worth it in the long haul. And I think that's also a lesson for other incoming coaches, for athletic directors. Better to wait 3 weeks, lose out on some portal prospects, and get the right guy for a key hinge point job than be slaves to the calendar and say, oh, we got to beat the transfer portal window. Some things matter a little bit more than others in a longer period of time.
Yeah, the timing was ultimately very, very, very weird, and how it shook out. But again, the good news is is that we don't have to worry about USC's DC. I am insanely bullish on who they brought in, and then who they brought support, and not as much as the defense coordinator. It also seems like it kind of seems like a plan unfolded. Do you know what I mean? Because the group they did bring in Belk, bringing in Entz, bringing in Henderson, all guys that came from, let's face it, somehow on paper took a demotion, right, to come play, to come coach at USC, can't but help USC on the field. And I know USC has the players, and I literally can't wait to see us go. So I'm good with putting a moratorium on the Grinch conversation for the rest of the season, because if you want to wrap it up, but I'm kind of done talking about Grinch. I wish him the best, but I'm glad he's not here anymore.
One final note, and then I'll let you know what I would talk to Lincoln Riley long-term in a lengthy conversation about. Oklahoma 76 in total defense in Alex Grinch's final season, 79th in yards per play. I do believe, for as marginal as that is, it was about a 20-25 spot jump from some of the earlier defenses. Maybe Lincoln Riley just thought he was improving and maturing and rounding into his own. I'm going to throw that out as a possibility as well. He had done some good things at Washington State in particular. We know that.
And didn't he had one season prior to that where I think he was in the 30 range, right? I mean, Grinch at Oklahoma, wasn't he?
I don't know. I don't know if that was their big season where they almost went to the national championship game, almost beat Georgia, or not.
No, I think it might have been the COVID season, actually.
The one good defensive season for Grinch was the COVID year, 2020.
Yep. And so they regressed the final season. Okay, there you go. So for me, I would really need to bring you two with me, because I would start the conversation, but you guys would have more knowledge of the inner workings of USC and the infrastructure there, because there's been so much talk about NIL and him, meaning Lincoln Riley, getting the support, not getting the support, not just NIL, but the support of the administration and where that stands. And if he really feels the same about this position today than he did when he signed, which has been, a year and a half ago. And so 2.5 years ago, I guess, 2.5 years ago. And I would just like to pick his brain in that direction. His expectations of the job, if it's turned out to be the job that he anticipated from those standpoints, from a support standpoint.
Well, if you listen to Matt's just amazing. I mean, he was an Oklahoma insider. I didn't agree with everything he said, but he made it very clear to anyone listening to the Riley files that Matt did a great job orchestrating. He said that's the reason why he left. He said he just did not feel that he was supported by, he was being asked to prove it first and then we'll support you kind of stuff. And they slow played Riley. And then he's like, I'm out. And I think they tried to rally to keep him, but then he's just like, I'm going to go or they're going to support me. So if he left there because he wasn't supported, these are all ifs, then why wouldn't he leave here if he was promised things? Now, again, I think that what he's getting here at USC, clearly he's getting the staff he wants. Clearly he's getting the support because you're not going to get much better than what he has, I think, right now, as far as a defensive staff. He's getting the building he wanted. He's getting the facilities he wanted. They've broken ground on that. That's going to be ready, I think, in a couple of years. So the USC is doing this. The final piece is, and from people I trust, that it is the NIL is being sorted out. It's just an administrative level issue. It's not a financial funding issue. It's just how they're working, just the inner workings of it at the highest level is all I'm going to leave it at. And once they figure that out, again, I think anyone in college football knows what USC can do when it's hitting on all cylinders.
And we have to make the point before you come in, Mark. We have to make the point. Is Dave Emmerich the administrative equivalent of what Alex Grinch was on the football field? Dave Emmerich from the Leech Tree, someone Lincoln Riley knew and had a degree of familiarity with. Is that comfortable familiarity, again, getting in the way of hiring an actual skull crusher at an important hinge point, nerve center type position? I saw earlier today, Texas Tech shelled out big dollars for its general manager. And people in the industry are gradually coming around to the belief that, boy, you need to have a rock star general manager to really make your NIL work, to make the inner workings of your program work. Dave Emmerich, if we don't see something really significant this December, Lincoln Riley needs to cut the cord, much as he finally had to cut the cord with Alex Grinch. I mean, to me, off the field, that is the number one issue at USC. Dave Emmerich in that really, really important nerve center, traffic cop, administrative position. Is Lincoln Riley sticking with a familiar guy that he knows to the detriment of himself and his program? We really need to be asking that question.
It is quite obvious when Matt throws the haymakers. These have not been haymakers, but he's throwing little jabs tonight. There's a little jab here, a little jab there. All right. What I am impressed with on Friday nights is when you guys take phone calls, and it's not like California, Arizona, California. They're all over the country. They're all over the place. But look at this. This one, of course, from our friend Megan, Aussie 12 from way down under. Megan, thank you so much for the contribution. We so much appreciate you. She says, greetings from down under, gents. Thank you, Megan.
Yeah, Megan's my friend. I know Megan well from Traveling Fools channel, and she's a huge. So we have to decide if Megan's a bigger Pete Carroll fan, Seahawk fan, or Trojan fan. And my guess is it's D, all of the above, because she's proved it. She's been I've called her on it. She comes back on the screen fully decked out in all of her SC gear and bobbleheads and everything. So yeah, she's a huge SC fan. She came out. She went to I believe she told me she went to, was an SC game, became a fan, and then followed Pete Carroll up to Seattle. I hope I get that story right. Yeah.
I became acquainted with Megan when we started a morning show, and we did that for about 25 shows, and Megan showed up every day, and she was throwing me all sorts of breakfast suggestions and keeping things lively. So Megan, we appreciate you. All right, folks. Please like the video. It's a simple thing to do. Please like the video. Let's start there. You enjoy the content, the conversation from these two, and I get to jump along and ride with these two on Monday night. And of course, there's the subscriber button, and it's an easy thing to do. It is absolutely free, and it just helps grow the channel. believe us. Please make that minor commitment there. Please subscribe here at the Voice of College Football. These guys deliver.
Now we need to go to Tim. Need to go to Tim for his question of Lincoln Riley.
Oh, okay. Well, I did. I the question about the nose tackle, and again, I think I would get that. Okay. I think all of us, by the way, all of our questions.
Okay.
We're gonna get the coach speak. I know we are. And he always apologizes. He always goes, I know this isn't the answer you want to hear, but then he gives a coach speak answer. Well, I would love, and I've never had the opportunity to have the side conversation where he gets to speak freely off the record. I've never had remotely close to that situation. But yeah, I mean, I personally am curious because I'm just saying there's something, you get that feeling in the back, that little tingly spider sense in the back of your head. There's just something about that situation. Someone in the chat, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, was saying, no, I just think USC went after defensive tackles and they struck out. I just, with the glaring weakness that has been on our front seven for a number of years, even before really, going back to probably like 2017, there's been a hole there, and I just can't believe that would not have been offensive tackle, quarterback. Now I think that our offensive tackles, I think that our tackles have emerged. I think you go into a season thinking as a fan, you go, well, what do we need from last year, right? But we don't really see spring ball. We don't see spring practice. And I've kind of been trying to tell people there's a huge leap in college football from year to year. But I think that biggest leap when it comes to certain positions, especially like quarterback, offensive line, that year 1 to year 2 leap, that freshman year to that sophomore leap that college athletes make in most sports is a phenomenal leap. And I just wonder, do they see something? Did Lynn and Henny see something on that line saying, hey, wait a minute, I think we could work this out. Now it's for a fact they did go after certain guys. They did go after Harmon. And they did go after your traditional defensive tackles. But I think when that price went up, they said, it's, this would be nice to have, but do we actually need it? I just find it really hard to believe that USC just struck out completely at that position, if it's truly the position of need that we all think it is. And I do think it's an important position.
I'm no transfer portal personnel expert, but at the same time, I'm in that every day. During the transfer portal cycles, I am doing shows, boom, 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 going through personnel time after time after time. The pickings were quite slim across the board. I don't remember specifically defensive tackle, but of course, Tim, you mentioned Derek Harmon, the player out of Michigan State who went to Oregon. And then, of course, you had Dominic Williams, who was a all-conference player in the Big 12 at a TCU, who went to Oklahoma.
Yeah, I think they really did want Harmon really bad, but like you said, slim pickings. When the price tag, I'm not saying these guys are not good players. I remember back in the day, I said, Harmon's good. He's pretty good, right? But I mean, I wasn't saying, but again, Harmon's not a $800,000, a 7-digit player. He's just not. So when you're going up against big money that's willing to overspend for a position. Because think about it, Oregon is really going for a national championship this year. I know USC fans, we make fun of Oregon all the time, but they have a team they've built up there, and they really feel confident, and they should, that they've got a legitimate shot at going deep into the playoffs. If you're going to go deep into the playoffs, you are going to need depth on the interior defensive line, and having that extra piece, and you have the deep pockets, they were willing to throw a bunch of money to make sure that, and especially in this season when they're going to really go for it, that they have that depth piece. Because on defense, your corners and your defensive tackles, and then maybe your rush end, those are premium positions, and you want to have elite players and depth of elite players at all those positions.
Let's stay on the defensive line theme, but propel forward to 2025 and a missed opportunity with one Floyd Boucard out of Miami Central, top 40 roughly player at his position, who headed down to Oklahoma and USC, chose the Sooners on Saturday. Tim, were you fairly confident, or did you just have no idea, toss-up type decision there?
A lot of the people out of his visit were really confident that it was him. You know, they throw out those emojis. I believe a number of people that I trust said that that he was one of those people that may have given, a silent commitment. I mean, again, even like verbal commitments, even signing letters of intent these days don't really mean anything, do they? Right now, in the day and age of NIL and promises and whatever, it just doesn't seem. It's not the same, And it's not like Oklahoma doesn't have their own rock star line. They have Jeremy Bates, right? So I mean, not Jeremy Bates. Sorry. Who's the line
Brad
coach
Bates.
for? Huh?
Is it Brad Bates? I think.
Brad Bates
from Clemson.
Yes, you got it, Matt.
So I'm going back SC, but we'll leave that. So it's not like they don't have their top name coach as well on the defensive line, but I would say that it's July. And as much as I think that things do get kind of wrapped up now a lot earlier and guys shut it down and there's not as many last minute flips, I think USC might be the exception to that rule. I think there's a lot of kids that maybe have said, I'm not really feeling it. But if USC can actually prove it on the field, this year you might actually see some people flip back to USC. I'm not calling it, I'm not saying it, but I think there's a lot of kids with general interest, but it's just, do they want to go on a wing and a prayer? I think they're kind of saying, hey, you know what? Let's see it. Let's see it on the field. I don't have, as far as Boucard is concerned, I don't really have much to say on it, though, to be honest with you.
Well, I wrote about the Boucard recruitment, the success for Brent Venables and the failure for Lincoln Riley. And I noted that, this is why Oklahoma fans are so bullish on Venables. He is clearly setting the bar higher in recruiting. And, Lincoln Riley, before he came to USC, he voiced reservations about just how well he could recruit at Oklahoma. And Brent Venables is proving that you can recruit at the very highest level at Oklahoma. So to that extent, like, Oklahoma fans have been vindicated. Notice, I didn't even say feel vindicated. I said they have been vindicated. But they're vindicated only in the realm of the actual recruiting. Now, in terms of, coaching them up on Saturdays, that's a different deal. And so it's just really this Boucard recruitment just kind of ups the ante in terms of, well, it makes Lincoln Riley look bad on the recruiting trail, but it also increases the pressure on Brent Venables to, hey, you need to coach your guys up, reach some significant goals and targets, because if, like Dan Lanning, you keep falling short of the really big prizes, the really big achievements, just how good a coach are you? And also, like, do you deserve the benefit of the doubt in future recruiting competitions? And if Lincoln Riley, for all of his recruiting limitations, can deliver a 10-2 season this year, one would like to think a lot of people are going to say, oh, we took you for granted, Lincoln. We underestimated you, Lincoln. We sold you short, Lincoln. And then maybe you'll have a little bit of a Los Angeles gold rush on the trail and in the portal. So, hey, losing Boucard stinks. It's really bad. It's a gut punch. Like, I'm not a recruiting expert, but I will be honest in terms of, if a certain recruitment and losing it is a real gut punch, this is a gut punch. But that said, it has to translate onto the field at some point. And that is like the card that Lincoln Riley can still play. That if he can pull it together this season, then then hopefully at this time next year and in the 2025 off season, we're not just going to be kicking around USC's recruiting failures month after month, week after week. Because if Lincoln Riley does pull it together this season, I don't think we're going to be talking about recruiting failures anymore.
The Big Ten media will get together this week and also make their predictions on the 2024 season. That will be hundreds of them that will make those predictions. They get compiled, but some of Matt and Tim's colleagues there at USA Today got together in Indianapolis and put together 13 votes that were released today. So these are coming from 13 beat writers, and this is what they put together. They've got Ohio State number 1 receiving 8 first place votes out of 13. Oregon received the other 5. Nobody else received a first place vote to win the title. Michigan and Penn State tied for 3rd. USC in 5th. I'm guessing it was a close call with Iowa, maybe not. And then on down the line with Wisconsin, Nebraska, Washington at 9. They're kind of a mystery team for a lot of reasons, least amount of production coming back in college football. Rutgers, Maryland, and then the bottom of the barrel with Michigan State, Minnesota. UCLA, supposed to have a just a brutal season. Illinois, Indiana, and Northwestern with Purdue down there at the bottom. We got to sift through to get to Purdue, but that's what we've got, and that's pretty much been what the consensus has been throughout the off season for the most part.
Well,
you can't say
it
I'm
looks
surprised.
pretty chalk to me. It looks pretty chalk to me. It looks like there's no one went out on a limb on any of that. And I would have to believe that USC is closer to Penn State than they are to Iowa in my book. So we'll leave it there. Yeah, I know you're a Big Ten guy, and we're the new upstarts, Mark. But here's the thing: USC's situation is.
Hang on just a second.
Yeah.
By my face, that doesn't mean that I think that they're much separated from either one of them. So I don't think that they're separated much by Iowa, but I also don't think they're much separated from Penn State. I think that that's a log jam.
I just think so help me out. When was the last time Ohio State played Iowa?
They played them in 2022.
Oh, wow. Okay. And how'd they do?
They beat them 54-10.
Okay. Really good defenses going against really elite college offenses. It doesn't usually go that the defense stifles a really great offense.
You would have to have watched that game. I don't know if Ohio State had 50 yards of total offense in the first half.
Yeah, Iowa's defense was not bad in that game.
Okay, so explain the 50-plus points that they scored then. Was it special teams?
How many times did we get the conversation? Well, there were some pick sixes. By the way, Iowa's defense scored the touchdown that gave them the touchdown.
I just figured that. I took that as just a given that there was a pick six for Iowa.
Football team. Look at everybody's rankings about their defensive line, especially linebackers and secondary, arguably the best in the country at those two positions, and their special teams are always lights out.
All right, well, we'll see. I think the big pause for USC is going to be until USC does it on the field. What is this defense going to be? I think still people, including people that are beat writers, are not going to buy. Well, Danton Lindworth at UCLA, he's coming in. They brought a guy from Rams. He's pretty good, and they got a Division II guy that won some national championships, or an FCS guy that won some national championships. He's pretty good. I don't think until USC shows it that they're going to get the respect. Well, USC wasn't going to get the respect from national beat writers or even the Midwest until they actually show it. I think a lot of people in the Midwest have kind of forgotten what West Coast offenses tend to do to their defenses. That's all I'm just going to leave it there. I'm not making a prediction, but history is not going to tell us what's going to happen next year. But I've always heard, and I'm not the youngest guy in the world. I've heard every year, going back to '89, that USC, these surfer boys, wait till this Michigan defensive line gets a hold of them. They're not going to be able to do anything. And yet, time and time again, USC rises to the occasion and shows not just size, not just speed, but points. So we'll see.
What happened the last time Iowa played USC?
When was the last time Iowa played a non-Helton coached UST that had been driven into the ground in 2019? I mean, listen, if you want to tell me that if you want to tell me
won the Pac-12 right before that and went to the Cotton Bowl and went to the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, and they lost a bunch of guys that Sark had recruited, and that there was a huge hole on the offensive and defensive lines. Anyone that watched that game, it was Slovis, by the way, in that game. who had them coming back until he got his elbow was ruined, probably, or shoulder was ruined for the rest of his career. But that was a close game until Slovis went out. That's number one. But that was a team that had no trench. Talk about not having any trenches. Talk about having a roster that's pretty thin up front. That 2019 team was pretty sparse when it came to toughness up front. Sure. And that's why it played right into the hands of an Iowa. This team is not like that.
They also went 8-4 against a worse conference than what they are going to face this year.
If you're trying to get me to defend the 2019 Trojans coached by Clay Helton, it's not going to happen. But if that's your defense, that a Clay Helton coached team is what USC football is, then I'm going to have to disagree with you.
I mean,
many people would say that the 2023 edition of USC looked like a Clay Helton coach team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know why? Because Clay Helton left nobody on with no depth on the offensive line. So yeah, it was just 2 years outside of having Clay Helton as the coach that had been run to the ground for a good 6 years. Rome was not built in a day. You cannot build. You can bring in a Jordan Addison. You could bring in a receiver. You can bring in a Caleb Williams right away. You could bring in running back after running back. You can do that, but you can't load up an offensive and defensive line in 1 or 2 years. You really can't do that. So year 3, we're going to see. Again, Mark, if you want to argue with me that because that 2019 Holiday Bowl is what USC is going to fail in 2024, I think the logic is slightly flawed.
That's not what I said. Somebody else was bringing up games from years gone by to discuss what's going to happen in 2024.
When so USC
I didn't start that tact. That wasn't my approach.
When USC has athletes and competent coaches, that's what you see. So yes, I'll stand by that comment.
And I was counterpunching to let you know that Clay Helton was not start to finish an utter disaster. Winning Rose Bowls, finishing number 3 in the nation, winning a Cotton Bowl, or playing in the Cotton Bowl, winning a Pac-12 championship. That's
Matt, one thing, because that shows you
the portion of his tenure. Very easy to differentiate.
I can cherry pick.
That shows you the difference of what can happen if you have an incompetent coach walk into a star and NFL laden. I mean, we talked about recently. Look at the defensive guys on that 2016 team. All right. Look at the offensive linemen and defensive linemen on that 2016 team compared to what Lincoln Riley inherited. Yes, you give Lincoln, by the way, Mark, you give Lincoln Riley that 2016 roster. How many games does Lincoln Riley and USC win? A lot more than Clay Helton did that year, and they finished 3rd in the country. That roster was stacked, top to bottom, running back, quarterback, defensive line, safety, linebacker. It was a cornerback. It was disgustingly filtered with future NFL stars. And I mean, you can't compare that. That year was great for Helton. No harm against the man. He was given a job he shouldn't have been given, and he was kept way too long. That's not his problem. That was a USC administration problem.
Back to the original point that you made, don't be surprised if Iowa's a better football team this year than USC. And I won't be surprised at all if USC's a better football team than Iowa. I don't think there's any type of egregious disparity between these two teams. They're just very different teams.
Who has a better ceiling? Who has a bigger ceiling, in your opinion? Who has a bigger ceiling, given the unknowns? Because they're bringing in new OC, we're bringing in a new DC, right? A lot can change ceiling wise with that, right? But which one has potentially a higher ceiling? And also remember the people they have on those sides of the ball, the personnel.
I would say USC, but for a guy that majors on preaching the fundamentals and preaching the trenches and line play and great defense, boy, I would think he would back this Iowa club a little bit better. Let's just keep in mind, I'll throw out one number. They have not had a quarterback complete 60% of his passes since 2015. They are starting a quarterback. Possibly they got a quarterback battle. Cade McNamara, who's a 64% completion percentage guy in his career. And Brendan Sullivan, I'm not selling him to be anything great, but he may just in fact make the throw. 200 pass attempts in the Big Ten for Brendan Sullivan, 69% completion percentage. He may just be good enough just to make the normal throws that couldn't be made before. Maybe.
Listen, you've seen me on your national shows. Am I pro Iowa or not?
Yeah,
I've always been supportive. I love Iowa. This isn't that point, but what I'm saying to you is my point that I've made. Very good college defenses don't stand up. Think about in big national championship games, right? When you have elite offenses with elite receivers, which USC does. Go over to Gabe's channel and watch his video on the wide receiver room at USC this year, which is insanely underrated. When you have elite players like that in an elite system, can we call that? What can we call Lincoln Riley's offense an elite offensive system? I think we can. They carve up really good defenses. Tell me I'm wrong.
I don't know how many really good defenses they've faced. Notre Dame was a good defense. I didn't see any carving on that.
No, I don't mean 20. Come on, Mark, you're better than that. I'm not talking about 2023. I'm talking about 2024. We don't have the same. We talk about those freshmen are now sophomores.
I can only conjecture about games I haven't seen yet.
Well, you kind of have to if we're going to talk about 2024.
Sure.
Let's talk about 2024 and pivot to a story that one of LSU's cornerbacks, who was past tense making a bid for a starting role, he got suspended, and he's probably not going to play USC in week 1. And so Brian Kelly's secondary room just lost a piece of the puzzle. And one of the things that, I picked up from SEC Media Days, didn't watch it, but certainly followed it through LSU Tigers Wire, our partner site here at USA Today and the College Wire Network. One of the things I picked up was, like, Brian Kelly is high on some of the freshmen in the LSU secondary, but he's not sure if they're quite ready in their just in terms of football IQ and physical development to play in week 1. Now Brian Kelly, because of this suspension, he might have to throw a freshman into the fire and put him on an island against one of USC's receivers. So, and we've talked about this here at the Voice of College Football, that USC plus 6.5, run to the betting window and put some cash on the Trojans. The line probably should be 3.5 points. This today, you might now want to make LSU just a 2.5 point favorite. I think like today's news is worth a point. So yeah, Javian Toviano. He started 3 games last year, sophomore this year. So it's if he started 3 games, you can't really say like he was the heart of the problem with a bad LSU secondary. Like, he could have been a guy who got integrated into the lineup as he learned more about the scheme. Obviously, LSU's now changed its defensive staff, but I think he could reasonably have been viewed as an up-and-comer within that defense and within that secondary. So, LSU took a real hit, and that's certainly something that should give USC even more optimism that it can throw the ball down the field against this LSU defense.
Depth, right? Even if he's not the starter, and if they go to a nickel, is he that first guy to? I don't know how this is going to affect their depth, but it definitely is a piece. Matt, initially everyone swung back that he's not a starter, etc. Well, it certainly doesn't help. It certainly doesn't help when you lose someone at a position where I do believe. I'm sorry, I am blanking on his name. The Moscona, I think Moscone.
Oh, Matt Moscona, the joined us?
Moscona,
yes.
Yeah, he was talking about the secondary. He was talking, I'm not sure he was specifically talking about the cornerbacks, but he said that's where they're thin. That's why I said, well, wham, that's where we're strong. And this just makes a position of concern, we'll call it that, Matt. It weakens a position of concern. So yeah, that definitely can never be a good thing.
It would be one thing. It would be one thing if LSU had an injury on the offensive line, because they have so many other really elite offensive linemen. Like, you can still hold the fort there. But if you're losing in your weak position group, like that has to be extra alarming for Brian Kelly 6 weeks away from kickoff.
Also could possibly swing them one way or the other in regards to how aggressive they're going to be in terms of blitzing versus umbrella coverages to just try to keep everything in front of them and prevent the big play. See all sorts of our faithful here in the chat. We appreciate y'all being here at the Voice of College Football for our USC show. Trojan, Conquest, it's every Monday, 7 Pacific. And of course, Tim and Matt take your calls on Friday at 7 Pacific as well. You channel members know that Matt and I got together. We have delivered one segment. I'm going to post the other one for tomorrow. And so expect 3 segments out of Matt and I, and more will be coming. The choice cuts, as Matt likes to say.
Fork and knife very much in hand here at the Voice of College Football.
Mark, you gonna be on tomorrow? Adam wanted to know.
Adam, yes, I will. So the Big Ten and ACC Media Days go on. Will be going live at 4 Eastern over on the main channel, taking your calls.
And Adam, thank you for your membership and all the members out there. Appreciate you guys watching those choice cuts.
I'm sorry. We should have a live report from the Big Ten Media Days as well. Just want
to highlight, Adam has on our Friday show at the Voice of College Football, Adam has put a big C note each of the last 2 Fridays. So
Adam's spoiling everybody.
Basically, he's running the NIL for the USC channel at the Voice of College Football. He's been an absolute rock star. We want to thank Adam for his amazing generosity to our show on Fridays.
But above and beyond that, like many other people I see in the chat, like Adam literally has been, as long as I can remember, with the call-in show and everything, he's there, he participates, he calls in, just like many of you guys. And we appreciate you guys for all your contributions. But yeah, that was special, and appreciate that very much.
And I just like to emphasize that we, and specifically Matt and Tim, there is the same delivery of content. They are on the same amount of time, so they are still delivering the same show. That is all just bonus content to all of you. So this is not us needing any type of contributions to deliver what we currently are. We are still delivering that. This is to get more conversation going and to extend the phone calls.
And I can usually steal about 10 to 12 minutes of Matt's time, but not much past that. So yeah, that does help.
Speaking of which, I think we are good to go. Folks, we will attempt to continue our opponent series. Check out the previous shows that we've certainly spotlighted some of USC's best opponents this year, Penn State, and also LSU, of course, the opener in Michigan. And so check out those videos and those live streams, I should say, from the previous weeks. And we will do our best to highlight some of the other big games. Barry Fisher, thank you so much for the contribution. That's so nice of you. Barry's got nothing necessarily to say right now, but we thank you for taking the time and your generosity, Barry. Thank you for that.
Another long-term member of the channel, as well as contributor in the chat and comments. Even though Barry almost never agrees with me, he always has actually, he gives me pause. I won't say I always agree with you either, Barry, but you always leave very, very good I mean, you're consistent with your comments. I can't say very good because you and I, we always argue, but either way, I appreciate, because all of that, you guys, everything helps us out. Matter of fact, if you guys just want to go in the comment section and give us an emoji, you can get familiar. I think you guys know the one I'm talking about. If you want to, send it care of Tim. That's fine. I don't really care. But anything you guys do to this channel is greatly appreciated. In the chat, comments afterwards, becoming a member, super chats. We're trying to grow. We're trying to work our way to 6,000. There's a great community here on YouTube, and I see a lot of faces all around it. But we know it's special to get a crowd like this, and we really appreciate all you guys. Speaking of community, I'm sorry, I love you, Gabe, but here's one thing. 2016 was not, I hear this a lot. 2016 was not all Sam Darnold. And I think if Ronald Johnson heard you say it, Rojo, heard you, the Texas Tesla, heard you say that one of the best one of the best running backs ever to play at USC. I know we have Heisman Trophy winners, but this dude, if he was on a better team, would have got some run to get to New York. And there's also that guy, Adoree Jackson, who could play on either side of the ball that was pretty special for the Trojans. But I agree with you. Sam Darnold was also a player that was wasted during those years. But hey, look, he got that Rose Bowl. So, and they cannot take that Rose Bowl away from all of these guys. But I have to disagree. It was definitely not all Sam Darnold.
Yeah, it was mostly Sam Darnold. Like, he unlocked the team's potential. But yes,
Yeah.
a lot of other pieces on that team. Worth noting, segue alert. So the guy Sam Darnold replaced on that 2016 USC team, Max Brown. Guess who Max Brown, formerly of Pac-12 Network, is going to be calling college football games with this fall? Tom Brenneman. Tom Brenneman, who we all know, and that's a home run, and that's going to be a 4-0 ball game. And by the way, Nick Castellanos homered on the day that Tom Brenneman was hired by CW to do ACC and Pac-12 football. But so Max Brown, formerly of Pac-12 Network, he's going to be on CW calling games with Tom Brenneman. Yogi Roth and Ashley Adamson, formerly of Pac-12 Network, they're going to be on Big Ten Network. So they're going to be covering Big Ten Media Days. So like they now get more exposure. That's great for them and their careers. Ted Robinson, formerly of Pac-12 Network, he's going to be calling CW Pac-12 games with and also JB Long, formerly of Pac-12 Network, going to be calling CW games for Washington State and Oregon State. And Mike Yam, formerly of Pac-12 Network, he's going to be doing he's going to be hosting the CW Studio Show. So lots of media notes in terms of all the Pac-12 Network refugees. They're landing spots at Big Ten Network and CW. So that's going to form the part of the new media landscape with conference realignment this fall. So worth noting as we arrive at Big Ten Media Days, you're going to be seeing some of the familiar faces from Pac-12 Network now on Big Ten Network, and then this fall for games on CW.
Even beyond the damage that Larry Scott did with that mess of distribution he had for that channel, the amount of talent, in my opinion, that the Pac-12 had as far as their announcers and their analysts, and you just brought them all up, Matt, for them not to be seen compared to some of these yahoos you get on these other networks, it's mind-blowing. So to hear that these guys have all found homes, especially a Trojan like Max Brown. If you guys haven't watched Max Brown, he has his own, his own Instagram and his own YouTube. If you aren't watching him break down like the X's and O's, like you almost feel like you feel like you do completely have another level of understanding of offense when you listen to. He would have been if in another life, if he wanted to be a teacher, that would have been like the highest paid professor at Harvard, probably, because he has just an ability to make something so complex. Be a good teacher, you get something super complex and you make it easily digestible to somebody. And that guy can break down any offense and make you feel like you've been a coordinator for 10 years. So make sure you check him out.
On the subject of big media names, big week here at the Voice of College Football. We've got a record with Phil Steele on Tuesday. That should be released on Wednesday. We've got Steve Dace. I just recorded that with our college football preview. That's going to be released this week as well. I'm going to release program rankings, and I expect that Tim is going to agree with me 1 through 135 to the T. Again, program rankings are going to be released here at the Voice of College Football. And again, the ACC and the Big Ten Media Days are this week, and we're going live every day as we did today. Tony Siracusa was on to break down that whole Clemson Florida State mess and how Jim Phillips tried to meander his way through ACC kickoff today, but it starts out with the Big Ten on Tuesday, and we will have live coverage from Big Ten Media Days.
Brain, thank you so much for the super chat and read articles. We really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Tim, what's going on at Trojan's Wire?
I just got done, and you know what? You did it to me. I wasn't gonna talk, but our buddy Paul Feinbaum, I'm just finishing up. He's not done. Like, after making an idiot himself initially, and then a second time, he's back at it for a third time on First Take. But hey, listen, no, he's done calling, he's done being so negative. He wants to give USC the answer to USC's next coach. Because of course, you need to have prime time in Tinseltown. And living in Los Angeles, when I hear people talk like that, I begin to wonder to myself, have they ever been, has Paul Feinbaum ever even been to Los Angeles? The way they think that California and Los Angeles is kind of scary. But the fact that they think that Lincoln Riley's gonna be anywhere but USC over the next couple of years is embarrassingly shocking for him. After he went, by the way, the same Paul Feinbaum last year, guess who he picked as his dark horse to win the national championship last year? One of the teams. That's right. USC with Heisman Trophy winner Caleb Williams. So, I mean, this guy has no shame, really. He called out, like you said, Mark, he called out Harbaugh. What does Harbaugh do? He wins a national championship. So he probably had to jump off the Harbaugh thing. Now he's jumped on the Lincoln Riley thing after trying to tell people for about a decade that Saban was done. All he did was continue to win games, and the only team that could beat Georgia for the longest time. So there you go. There's Paul Feinbaum's career. I don't know how or why he's still listened to by anybody. I think he's just really jumping the shark at this point. So.
Matt, anything you've got to add? No, it's a yawner for Matt. There we go. That says enough. Tim and Matt on Friday night. That's at 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific. Get your question ready and hit them up on Friday night. And we will continue through this week here at the Voice of College Football. We hope you can join us, and we will see you on Friday, if not sooner.